Hey everybody, John Abdo here, author of Wolves of Croton, The Untold Story of Milo. Before I get into this little segment, I just want to thank everybody for the reviews and comments. It's just been wonderful to hear from people literally from around the world who've purchased and who have read the book and who are providing their comments. So thank you so much for that. What I want to talk about here briefly, because obviously it's explained in detail in the book, is how the Elean committee was in fear of Akoniti. And I'll get into what all these words are. The Elean Committee is the organizing committee for the Olympiad Games. Elis, Greece. Elis, the Elean Committee, that's the names that were used. Akoniti it's an admirable, it's a respectable victory in wrestling or fighting competitions back in the Olympiad Games. What it really meant is that your opponent never entered the pit. So you, as the fighter, the wrestler, the Pankrationist or whatever, were no dirt, especially in wrestling. Because the rule in wrestling, after they rub your skin with olive oil, is that if you touch the dirt, the olive oil would obviously allow the dirt to cling, and there was no doubt to a fallen wrestler. It's like, hey, you touched the dirt, you got, it's smeared all over your hand or your elbow or your knee or whatever. And in some wrestling competitions, at least the way it's written in Wolves of Croton, the stand-up wrestling, you couldn't touch the dirt with any other body part other than the bottoms of your feet. And there were some, offensive maneuvers where you went in for a takedown. You could brush your knee or scrape your hand to the ground because you were going for an offensive maneuver. But the appeals from the opposition were vehement, so a lot of wrestlers kind of like stood away from those offensive techniques that would cause those types of appeal. But Akoniti, in Milo's case, he was mangling these guys. He was so powerful and fast and explosive, and he had these feral attributes where he just had all this endurance and explosion. These opponents were getting mangled. So as the games continued to go on, and he competed in 7 Olympiad games, some people say 5, some people say 6, some people say 7. If you read all the historical accounts, he competed in at least 5. I wrote 7, but a lot of the opponents would just cower and say, I'm not stepping in the pit. They draw lots and, alpha, beta. It's like, oh, a match against Milo. Forget it. I'm not wrestling. I'm not going to go home injured or dead. It's interesting how the Elean committee was trying to convince other wrestlers to get into the pit to wrestle Milo. Some cowered out entirely. It was an embarrassment to them, to their coaches, to their sports delegation, obviously to their city, state, and country. So Akoniti was something that Milo was known for, but nonetheless, Milo won a lot by Akoniti. In 520 BC, at the completion of his wrestling victory at the 65th Olympiad Games, which has been earned by way of Akoniti, Milo was granted a special invitation to visit the newly constructed palace for King Darius in Persepolis. After Milo entered the king's private sanctum, he removed his champion crown and positioned the sacred olive wreath over Darius's headdress. I present you with my victor's crown, says Milo to the Persian king. Although I won by Akoniti, this represents my 5th Olympiad wrestling achievement. Opposition defeated before mounting the battlefield, the great Persian king replies, clearly impressed with Milo's achievement. So Milo, being prepared for his competitions, would sometimes sit there and get ready to go and wrestle, and all of a sudden they go, well, you won by Akoniti. Now that was not very favorable for the spectators. Because the spectators, it wasn't like you get on a plane or a train or a bus and you go to watch the Olympiad Games or any of the other Panhellenic festivals for that matter where Milo performed. And it's like they want to see what they called the godmen. Really, people revered Milo as a second coming of Hercules, but unlike Hercules, who was a mythological figure, Milo was an actual in-the-flesh mortal human being. But I just wanted to explain Akoniti because it's almost like, you pay your way to go to a sports competition to watch your favorite athlete. You can imagine they're traveling through forests and mountains, and some had to get in boats to go down rivers rivers and go across the seas. And then when they get there, it's like, oh, Milo is wrestling Akoniti today, which means he's not wrestling at all. So what they did see, if Milo did not wrestle and his opponents cowered, they would see Milo carrying the bull. Milo put on a bunch of strength exhibitions, which are explained in the book. He holds his hand out and he's asking people to bend his fingers, and they can't bend his fingers. So Milo performs a series of strength exhibitions after his competition to entertain the crowd, breaking ropes, breaking branches. So thanks again for listening, and I'll be back with you guys soon.